Good morning. We're going to talk today to Rand Weiskittel. He's a business advisor. He's helped me and my business on numerous occasions, and we're going to discuss things that I hear a lot of business owners talking about, and that's finances. I'm Josh Farley, president of Redline Electric and Solar. Join me as we talk to contractors, business owners, and experts who are willing to share their experiences to help you overcome obstacles when you're taking your business up and to the right. When I started my business, I used QuickBooks Desktop. I bought it, and actually, let's take that back. So when I started my business, I used a ledger. I got a checkbook from the bank, and when I wrote a check, I'd write it down, and other than that, I didn't know what I needed.
Right.
So eventually, I evolved into the desktop version, which helped me see like my incoming, my outgoing, and now I'm online. So but looking back, I wish I had put some things in place that I could score my business on, or really judge how the business is doing, project how the business is going to do, rather than playing like Sunday or Monday morning quarterback.
Right.
That's a commonplace. I'm not the only one.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, I think I would encourage someone to be in that place more than get stuck just getting the finances together, right? Get started.
For sure.
In the doing will come the knowing, and you'll start to figure out what you need. So I think that's very common to be in that situation.
So now that you have experience in this, and you've met with countless of business owners, and you see the struggle out there. I mean, what is the most common? Hey, I wish I knew now. What would that be? Like, is it just to have the history, or is it key performance indicators? Like, what do you think is most important?
I think the most important is to really understand the margins related to the product that you're delivering. So regardless of the fact that a business owner, unless they come from a financial background, regardless of that, there's going to be this process where all business owners need to understand what their margins are. And what I mean by that is, how much is it costing them to deliver their service? Not the overhead. Yes, they need to know the cost of their overhead. Yes, they need to know the cost of the rent. Yes, they need to know those other costs. But if you're going out on a job, and this is a common mistake that happens, especially for a business owner that's maybe starting as just themselves delivering, and then maybe adding the next employee, is really early on getting a real understanding of what time and money it is taking to deliver that particular job.
What do you mean? When I started my business, I was like the only guy. Well, I had a helper. My situation is a little bit different, but we'll get into that on a different episode. We would go to we show up, we do the work, and we get a check, and that's pretty much all we thought about. I thought about, as an employee before, I would go and do the job, and I get paid an hourly wage. So this time I went, I did the job, I got paid more than I was making before working for somebody else, but I didn't consider everything else that it took involved.
Right.
So when I did hire an employee, it was like, there's so much cost involved to put that truck on the road.
Absolutely.
That I wasn't thinking about, for sure.
Absolutely.
So what do you suggest? What do you suggest they use to track that stuff?
I think in the very beginning, I think that owner, if you're starting at that phase where the owner is actually the employee delivering the service, keep track of your time. Owners don't want to do that.
Right.
And I completely understand that.
Right.
Nobody wants to keep track of their time. But if you can, on an early, start to treat yourself as your own employee, and think through that mindset, to go ahead and get a system in place where you're keeping track of your time. It doesn't have to be too detailed, but something's better than nothing.
And that's tough, especially being the boss. It's like, I know you've asked me, do I keep track of my time? And no, I don't keep a time card.
Yep.
Now I color code my calendar as far as to track how much time I'm spent in certain areas of my business: sales, estimating, deliverables, administrative, which is mind-blowing to me. Looking at my calendar, I can see now. Before, I didn't know where I was spending most of my time. But let alone a time card. It's something that I think all business owners struggle with as far as the value of our own time. Number one.
I think it's absolutely crucial. So I was about to say that if you have aspirations to go beyond being the only employee in your business, it's crucial.
For sure.
It's just crucial, because at the end of the day, we've got time and we've got money. Those are the two those are the two resources, that go in, is time and money.
Gotcha.
And so a lot of times people get focused on, at a certain stage, they start to get real focused on the money part of it when it starts to play a part in it. And they don't realize how important that time piece of it is as the owner.
Right.
So if you're going to get to a point where you're going to have employees under you, and we've talked about this from that leadership matrix standpoint, what do you have? Where are you spending your time? And this is really true whether it's you as the only employee,
Right.
or if you're going to start to build something. I don't care if you're going to add 2 employees or 10 employees, or if you have aspirations to add 20 or 30 employees.
Right.
The sooner you can get that, start looking through the framework of marketing, the functional areas.
Correct.
How much time am I spending in marketing? How much time am I spending in sales? How much time am I spending in delivering the services? How much time am I spending in the structure of my business, the admin side of it?
Right.
Even if it's as a leadership. So those are the pieces where if you start to really understand where you're spending your time,
Then you know the true cost of that.
you know the true
For sure.
cost of it.
For sure. And then along with the cost and the margins, and we're not just talking bottom line, because bottom line obviously, is what we want to see. But the things that help create a better opportunity for those numbers to increase. So knowing your cost is number one.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I struggled with a break-even point and I struggled with that for years as just an electrician, because most of the stuff I do is time and material. So I have a set cost and a set rate, and it pretty much I covered my break-even every time.
Yep.
Most of the time. But then I started adding administrative costs, overhead costs, expenses, some things that I didn't account for in the beginning when it was just me in my own truck.
Right.
That really opened my mind on I need to do something better. I need to figure out a little bit more about my business and the true cost involved. And the Small Business Development Center has a program called the Profit Mastery. I've been through it. I suggest you guys take a look at it. It's when I did it, the City of Mesa sponsored it, so it wasn't a cost for me. But I think there is some cost, but it's definitely worth it. The pros outweigh the cons as far as what I got from that. It still resonates with me, and I'm a business owner. Not that we have time to sit down and dive into it 100%, but I'm still working on things that I learned
Sure.
down there. And the break-even point was great. The current ratios, the quick ratios, so those are things that you ask a contractor, hey, what's your current ratio? It's crickets.
Right.
Like that's nobody knows, and me neither. Like I didn't know what it was or why I needed to know. But if you're looking to expand your business or get a loan or try to do anything, the bank's going to ask you those things.
Sure.
So those are a lot of struggle. I think those are a lot of pain points for new businesses.
Definitely. I think anything when it comes to the financial side of it, sometimes what happens is I think finance gets commingled with accounting.
Right.
And it gets commingled, and then what's the next step? Commingling it with bookkeeping. So we're not talking about bookkeeping here right now, right? We're
Right.
talking about finances, and we're talking about what's happening from all your efforts within your business, how you're spending your time and money, how your employees are spending their time and money, from the top line all the way to the bottom line. And at this point, we're only talking about the income statement or
Right.
the profit and loss statement.
Right.
We're not talking about the balance sheet, how much cash.
What's a balance sheet?
Right.
Like everybody knows, everybody knows the profit and loss for sure. And
Yep.
I've looked at the balance sheet years ago. I'm like, this is for my accountant.
Yep.
But that's where I was wrong. So I had what they call an aha moment. When I started asking my accountant questions that he couldn't quite answer, I had the moment like, I need to know these numbers, not him.
Mm-hmm.
These numbers I give him to tell him how I'm running my business. And it's definitely was tough. It's been a tough journey. It's still, I'm still working on it to become a master.
I'm still working on
Well,
it,
I
right?
hope
So I've been
we all
doing it
should
for
be, right.
So I've been doing it for a long time.
But I'm trying to become a master of my numbers so I can run my business appropriately. And if you know what a balance sheet is, make sure it's on the accrual setting, so then you know exactly. You can see your receivables. I had an issue with when the first time I looked at my balance sheet, and it said my receivables were negative $6, and I'm like, I owe somebody $6. Like I owe one of my customers $6. Where's all my receivables? So that's a big thing for me too. Is and we're going to probably be all over the place. So stay with us. Looking at those numbers, the P&L, the balance sheet. When I use QuickBooks, it's probably one of the more common programs out there. I use QuickBooks to run my business when I look at it on an accrual basis. It tells me what I sold and what I owe, no matter if I got the money or I paid the bills.
Sure.
It tells me exactly where I'm at on a what-if scenario. If we were to get all of our money paid, this is how much we'd have.
Yep.
If we were to pay all the bills, this is how much we have left. But when you file your taxes, it's all on a cash basis. So you got to kind of shift back and forth, and it's two different mindsets. And there's a lot of companies out there that run off a cash basis, and so you got to find what's right for them.
Yep.
But for me, my journey, accrual, learning the numbers, the quick ratios, and again, the profit mastery was amazing. It was a four-day class, I think, not all in a row, but really learned a lot of
Sure.
things.
Sure.
Advice, the advice for, hey, I'm just starting out. If somebody were to come to you, because I know the Small Business Development Center helps if you're just thinking about opening a business. So if you're an employee and you're working and you think, I want to open my business, advice, what would you tell them as far as what should I do? Do I open a bank account? Do I get QuickBooks right away? I
Sure.
don't have any money.
Sure.
What do you think?
Well, so there's different advice, different stages, right? So if somebody's an employee, and let's say they're working for another contractor, and they're an employee,
Right.
and they're thinking about going and starting their own business, there's certain advice there where it's absolutely get some advice about what that looks like, and some of that starts with, well, what are your goals? So
Right.
at the end of the day, what are your goals? Is it to have a side gig? Or is it to create your own company and your own brand and have your own customers and recurring revenue and
Or
that
the
kind of
largest electrical contractor in Arizona?
stuff? Yeah, which is
Right.
possible, right? And so that idea of getting some advice from somebody to get started in that realm, I think, is really, really important.
Right.
So your question you asked, do you open a bank account? Do you do, some of those stuff? And the answer is yes, maybe, possibly, right? So
Right.
without diving into those details, how do you get good feedback? The thing that I would suggest is a lot of times people will just start trying to wing it on their own.
Yep.
Hey, at least you're getting started.
Yep.
Okay, and I think there's something to be said about getting started.
Hey,
right?
that's what we're doing here.
You can't steer a parked car,
Right.
right? And so if you can get started and start putting some gas on the pedal, but really quickly start to bring some other people in with you on that journey. And you touched upon it. So from the standpoint of financially managing your business, it's totally different what a tax person is going to do in preparing for your taxes
Right.
versus having financial information to run your business, to make financial decisions related to your business, right? We
Right.
talk about this. You're not in for a hobby,
Right.
right? You're out to make sales. You're out to deliver a service that has a margin that will cover your overhead, that'll
Provide-
feed
the
you,
family,
the
yep.
family, or whatever your goals are around that, right?
sure.
And there's nothing wrong with that, right? And so the idea of being able to bring somebody in, if that's a weak spot, or maybe weak spot sounds too negative. If that's just an area you don't have experience with, bring somebody in early so that you can start the education process.
Well, even if you did have experience, even if you do have experience, for me, the more people that I can surround myself with and banter or mentor with or learn from or whatever it is, brainstorm, roundtable, whatever you want to call
Sure.
it, the more people that I can bounce ideas off of, the better. I mean, it's really expanded. I mean, because I'll have hour-long conversations, and in 15 minutes into that conversation, somebody will say one thing, and I'll be like, "That's the thing."
Yeah.
And then I can't concentrate because I need to put it in place. I'm
Right.
like, "That's the thing." Like, no matter what it is, I pick up something from pretty much everybody.
Right.
But for me, yeah, getting those financials in order, knowing exactly how to forecast and look back and see where we are, see what we did,
Yep.
and then relate it to something that we put in place, say that worked or didn't work, was key. And then yeah, being responsible for your numbers and not just washing your hands and say, oh, the accountant's doing it.
Yep.
Because all the accountant's doing is adding or multiplying or whatever it is. Like, he has no idea what those numbers are, how those numbers work for you.
Yep. And I think you just hit on I think probably the fundamental reason why businesses struggle. The ones that struggle, why they struggle.
Right.
And it comes to that aspect of I don't care if you're coming up on your first million, coming up on your first 10, or coming up on your first 20. If the owner of that business has not embraced the idea that they are the financial leader of that business, period. End of story.
Right.
If they have not embraced that, there's not many companies that blow through whatever that number is to get to
Right.
where they want to get to if they haven't embraced that.
Can't break the glass ceiling.
Can't break it. They'll cycle. They will bump up against it. So if you're a business, if you're a contractor that's bumping up whatever ceiling it is for you in your organization, whether it's $1 million or $2 million or $5 million or $10 million, whatever that number is for you.
Right.
Now, if you're not cycling through some number, kudos, right? You go through. You ask anybody that's blown through whatever that ceiling is and not got caught somewhere. Okay.
Right.
And you start to have conversations with them, I can almost guarantee you, without a doubt, that they are somebody. They might be a salesperson, they might be an ops person, but they embrace those numbers like nothing else.
Right.
And that's the key thing, and we see that all the time because, like we talked about already, this idea of people think of finance as accounting and they think of accounting as bookkeeping. And so now they've just turned being the financial leader of their company, but filtering it through their mind as bookkeeping.
Right. Right.
Right? No, you're the financial leader.
Correct.
Are you the sales leader of the company? Are you the ops leader of the company? Are you the you have to be. That doesn't mean that if you get to that 5 million, 10 million, you start building a management team, that you're not going to have a CFO.
You're still the leader.
You're still the leader.
For sure.
And I don't care if you then get to 30 million, you're stepping into the boardroom and you're the chairman of the board.
Right.
You're not getting there if you don't understand all those pieces. Now, you don't have to be an expert. That's not what I'm suggesting. But this idea of outsourcing the leadership, and really what are you doing when you outsource the leadership? You're outsourcing the responsibility.
Correct.
And then you're putting yourself in a position to blame somebody else for what's going on wrong with your company.
Well, that's easy to do. I mean, it's
Of course
easier
it is.
that way. It's hard to take responsibility for yourself, for your actions. Accountability is
Yep.
key. So you definitely have to. I mean, if you're watching this or if you're looking to be better, I mean, you're already ahead of the game, because if you're not even thinking about becoming a better business owner or running or wanting a better business, then what are you doing?
Right.
Like you said, you can't steer a parked car. Isn't that great? So let's talk about the break even. So in a real quick scenario, break even is your fixed cost divided by
Your margin.
right.
Your
And-
margin percentage, right? So what I mean by that is I'll try and paint a quick picture here,
Yep.
right? If you know that you have $1,000 in overhead,
Yep.
right? It's probably a lot more than that, but let's just for simplicity's sake, if you had $1,000 in overhead costs,
Yep.
okay, and every other piece of your delivering your product is a variable expense, okay? How much sales do you have to achieve in order to cover your overhead costs of $1,000? So, if you're selling a job for $100, okay, and it's the variable cost, not the overhead cost, but
Right.
the variable cost is $75 to deliver on that $100 sale. Now you have $25
of margin contribution.
of margin to cover to go towards that $1,000.
Correct.
Right? And so now we divide 1,000 by that 25.
Which is the contributional margin.
The 25
Yep.
is.
So you
okay?
gotta learn that.
And there's a little terms going around here,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
if you
yeah.
could, if you kind of follow just this simplistic standpoint, right?
Yep.
So now you have $1,000 that you need to be able to sell jobs to cover the $1,000. For every job that you sell and work, nothing's that simplistic, but right? So
For
now
sure.
you have a $25 contributing to cover that overhead, right? Yep. So what is that? What is 1,000 divided by the 0.25?
Right.
It's $4,000. So now you have to sell $4,000, right, worth of work. Okay, so let's take that one step further. Each job is $100 in sales.
Yep.
So what's 4,000
Right.
divided by 100?
So you got to do 40 jobs.
You got to do 40 jobs to cover your $1,000.
Right.
So from that perspective, then we can do a lot of information with that, because I don't know. I talk to a lot of business owners and they'll think, oh, I'm going to do a marketing campaign for $5,000. Oh, well, I can get $5,000 more in sales.
Right.
That's not covering your marketing campaign.
Not even close. For
So
sure.
under
Right.
that scenario that we just described, if you've got a $5,000 marketing campaign,
Right.
how much sales do you have to do? You got to do 5,000 divided by that 25.
Right. Don't get me started. I don't have a calculator.
It's $20,000 in sales. to
No,
cover
for
it.
sure.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
you think your fixed cost divided by your contributional margin, which is the profit on each particular job outside of variable or your variable cost.
It is your variable cost,
Correct.
exactly, which mimics most of the time your cost of goods sold.
Correct.
Not always. There's
Most
some
of the time,
variations there, but that's the piece of it where you can start to, as you get financially educated, there is a benefit to doing this because your brain shifts on how you run your business.
Right, and this can be done on a dollar wave or a unit pricing or a unit calculation.
Yep.
So it can help people that do services or sell products, hold inventory. So there's a lot of things. So I would say it's very important to know what your break-even point is, because once you get to that break-even, sky's the limit. I mean, it's freedom. I mean, from there it's freedom. Rand, thanks for being here today. I appreciate it. The numbers always make me think that I need to get better, and that's why we're here. If you want to get better at your finances, for me, I use Profit Mastery at the SBDC. If you want more information, give me an email. Hey, thanks for tuning in. If you like what we're doing here, subscribe to our podcast at iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher, and to our YouTube channel to see more episodes. Go to upandtotheright.org to get all the links.